Greetings and welcome everyone to the Semicolon Podcast. My name is Cantave and thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. We are now on episode number 4 of the Semicolon Podcast, where we seek to answer one main question. And that question is, does the story continue or does it end? Here at the Semicolon Podcast, the whole purpose of it is to provide you with insights, information, perspectives, and even ideas of the world around you and how it impacts your life and those of your loved ones, but to also give you the encouragement to keep moving forward no matter what. Because the reality is, life continues, and so will we. So for today's episode number 4, we're going to have a frank, open conversation. There are lots of topics, that have been brainstorming and matters, things happening in our community, situations that really impact the lives of persons that need addressing. But we're going to be getting into all of them. We are here for the long haul. Like I said, life continues, and so will we. But for today, I want to talk about things we need to consider, things I need to consider, that you need to consider, before we vote in the next elections, right? Because from the beginning of this podcast, basically all the topics has been speaking about matters such as decision making, accountability, and our role, in society. But there's one thing that we can't ignore, which is the fact that every one of us cannot represent each other. And we have this democratic process where we decide to select the 15 of the best, most capable, most competent persons, perhaps, to represent us, to make decisions on our behalf, and to execute the ambitions, the will, the desires of most of the needs, not necessarily desires, but to tend to the needs of the people and to set forth a vision, that everyone can buy into, even if there's disagreements or if there are matters that we, find are in need of changing, and even if there's critical responses to that vision. The whole point is that we can still see ourselves at the end of this journey that we're on. We can still have hope that for the next generation things will be better. We can just be hopeful, confident, and not be fearful of what tomorrow may bring. And that is why it is so important that you consider who you elect, who you decide will represent not just you, but your neighbor, the whole island itself, and future generations. Because that decision, that choice, if you so choose to make use of it, is impactful. Now, I am well aware of the common sentiment that voting don't make a difference because your vote is the same people who go in there, or if it's somebody new if it's somebody new that goes in there, they do the same thing as those who were there before. But guess what? When it comes to life, it's all about trial and error. But I do find that St. Martin has been dwelling in error for a bit too long. And so after all these trials, after all these governments, and for the first time basically, that we've had a government that has sat successfully for its full term thus far. And I say thus far, not with the hope or intention that it breaks, but because I understand the players that exist, the players in the team that is this current coalition, and the history of some individuals, when it comes to ensuring that a government is broken. Nonetheless, as we see the launches of many candidates, the parties, basically most parties have launched. Maybe there are rumors that there may be 1 or 2 more coming out, but nonetheless, we know that our politicians, your leaders, they are gearing up for the next election, which is supposed to be somewhere in January 2024. But because of St. Martin's track record in history, maybe there is a possibility that it may be sooner. And so I believe it's important that we prepare ourselves to deal with what is, at what is at hand and what will come. But before we get into that, I do want to present to you the great and delightful experience that I believe you will benefit from, in that one that will bring you a bit more joy and satisfaction, which is the ability to head on over to the Bel Air Beach Hotel and check out their gingerbread cafe. The gingerbread cafe is truly a delightful place, very open space, open air restaurant with great and affordable prices and delightful food that you're bound to fall in love with. And notwithstanding the customer service that I believe is one that you just can't beat, whether you intend to go down there for breakfast or lunch or dinner. Also be sure to check out their all-you-can-eat barbecue, a Monday night special, and other specials that they have at their restaurant, such as even the ability to rent it out for events, birthdays, and celebrations. So head on over to the Bel Air Beach Hotel for a great experience you just can't miss. Welcome back, everyone, to the Semicolon Podcast. And so for today's topic, what you need to consider. I am really stressing this point of considering the factors I'm about to explain before you vote, and just the value of decision making. Again, because your life depends on it. Your future, our future, depends on it. And then also consider that there are so many people who live on this island, who call this island home, but who don't have the privilege, right? They don't have the privilege to be able to vote and make a decision to say, well, this is who I want to speak on my behalf, to represent me, to represent this country. And what we need to ask ourselves first is, are we satisfied with where we're at right now? Are we satisfied? Are we content? And if not, then why? Because one of the things that is a reality, and that perhaps most of you may not be aware of, is the fact that it's not really our leaders who are at the driver's seat, in regards to the governing of St. Martin. Since the pandemic, and especially because of the fact that we had to request loans from the Netherlands, it's really the conditions, right? The timelines and projects that they see necessary for St. Martin to get its affairs in order, and for St. Martin to govern with accountability and implement good governance standards or practices, that we see certain things being done. St. Martin is still on a trajectory and trying to figure out, I would say, what exactly it will do and how it will meaningfully make use of the $550 million that was made available from the Dutch government, from the Netherlands, after the passing of Hurricane Irma. And even that in itself encountered so many bottlenecks and unfortunate scenarios that I believe deserve its own episode. But besides that, since the COVID-19 pandemic, again, it is really the will of the Netherlands that's being executed. And so you ask yourselves, then how is it that St. Martin has ended up to the point where, in essence, this autonomy, this freedom that we fought for, we can't even execute, right? We can't get it right. And while I understand the nature of colonialism, I like to first deal with myself, meaning in my country, because it's here that I born. Yes, we are, at the end of the day, our legal system is Dutch. A lot of us have Dutch passports, and this island is a Dutch country. That is a fact. But it's been a Dutch country that has had a measure of ability to make decisions that would have ensured that the people and the island itself would have been in a better position. So if we realize that St. Martin has taken steps backwards, then we need to figure out why and what exactly have our leaders been doing. So on the same point of the fact that we had to, request funds from the Netherlands that were made available to us in order to, for example, create the SSRP, which provided funds for unemployment, funds for businesses, to be able to pay their people, etc. With that money came a set of conditions, and those conditions are still in play today. Even though one of the organizations that was proposed from the Netherlands to, in essence, implement a form of higher supervision, and that organization was called a COHO, which would have, been the government above the government, in essence. Decision was made to scrap it, but guess what? The intentions, the plans that was set for St. Martin to execute that is the real driver. They are the real driver, right? Those technocrats and civil servants from the Netherlands that are assisting St. Martin in implementing things that we should have done ourselves, that we could have done ourselves. They are now the ones telling us, well, you got to get this in order, you got to do this, you got to do this, and you have to do it by this date or by X amount of months or X amount of years, else, well, whatever consequence may come about will come about. And so that is why I recognize the fact that if we have this ability to vote and select people who could not just represent us, but to make decisions that to be critical enough, that will have the foresight to understand the affairs and the matters, not just the matters, but the affairs and the responsibilities, the tasks that one has to execute to run a country, then perhaps we need to do a better job. Because it can't be that we have what we have right now, which is quite enough, one too many, and it's more than one, but one too many members of parliament who just don't show up to work, who just simply cannot perform, who can't do the job, who can't even stand to ask proper questions. Just to ask a question, even if all you do is ask a question, and are you satisfied with that? You're complaining about everything that's happening around the country, but then when it comes to making a choice of someone who is able to at least read a 30-page report, without bias, to value facts and information, someone that has ability to at least debate, to acknowledge when they're wrong, and to applaud others when they are right. Someone that has the ability to be integral by not, for example, being a member of parliament, but because a member of parliament is allowed to have other activities, they rarely go to office. There are members of parliament who rarely go to their office in parliament, but they want all the benefits, to travel, to have a phone, and so forth. Going back, so as an example, as I referenced the Netherlands being the one who's really driving this country, we have where it took over 10 years. Even though there were reports published about the redundancy pay, for example, where when a minister or parliamentarian leaves office, they are entitled to 2 years of pay, of their salary. 2 years. 2 years. So then you ask yourself, when it comes to fixing our roads, just fixing our roads, how much money would have been available if those members of parliament, not all of them, but a good bit of them, would stop being lazy, go and get a job and figure out how to build a business, go and work hard so that they could understand the problems and the experience of the small man, since everybody's a small man except for them, everybody's a small man. If they would just get up and work and meaningfully earn their income without having to depend on your tax money, without having to depend on handouts basically, imagine how much money we would have had to put into the road fund. That in itself is another episode. There's something called a road fund, by the way, that has been poorly managed and basically not even utilized. But I'll be getting to that. So year in, year out, we see governments fell, new set come in, some of the old ones stay, or some of those who were there earlier, they stay, but no significant change. But then, how are you changing your approach to electing persons, to selecting people who have the ability to either improve or destroy your life? So that is something that simply needs correcting. And that's just one example of something to consider, because it wasn't until the Netherlands made the decision to say, well, if we're giving you money, we need to see you spend this money wisely. We talk about being, we're a young country, and if we are a young country, but you have no problem living a lavish life, while the country goes further into debt, while so much of government's finances cannot be properly accounted for. And this is not no hearsay. These are things that are in reports. Just read all the reports of the General Audit Chamber, for example. When it talks about The amount when imagine so it's so example of what I mean is that imagine husband and wife living together. Husband has a construction job, makes a little bit over minimum wage, so perhaps he maybe come home with $1,500 minimum wage is above $800, like $850 or so on St. Martin. His wife, so a couple, man, woman, married. The wife knows that the husband is supposed to come home with $1,500. But then every time he comes home only with $700. And then that $700 has to take care of paying rent, which is $500, feeding their 2 children, tanking up their 2 vehicles, because we have a lot of cars on St. Martin, tanking up their 2 vehicles. And then he likes to go out and drink with the fellas. He likes to go out and, go to bars and maybe go elsewhere. He likes to have fun. Even though fun does bring bun. He just likes to have fun. That's all he cares about. He's supposed to come home with $1,500. But he's only coming home with $700. Should that woman stay with such a man? An irresponsible man? But that's exactly how this country has been ran for a very long time. Even before 10-10-10. This new political status that we have, that we fought for, by the way, that the Netherlands reluctantly gave us. They didn't want to give it to us. We had to fight for it. So, should that woman stay with such a man? But that is exactly how St. Martin is being ran. That is how this country is, the affairs of this country is being conducted. And the people you have, the wife, the parliamentarians, whose responsibility is to vet, to analyze, to give oversight to government actions and spending, because the money is not theirs. They're like, yeah, whatever, man. That's how he is, But I can just stay with him because I love him so much. That's just how things be. One day he gonna change. Yeah, one day he gonna change, and he loves me so much. Yeah, he abused me, but it don't matter. He just kissed me up after. Buy me the phone cards, give me zinc for my roof. Help me get a loan. Help me pay GB, because GB just got hacked. Well, got hacked over a year ago, by the way. The company still need fixing. But we accept all this abuse, lack of leadership, lack of foresight. And we wonder, well, why the country ain't running smoothly. So now somebody else, going back to that point, the Netherlands now have to say, well, I've been watching what you've been doing. The Netherlands is like the auditor or the bank. You're spending, you owe me X amount of money. And instead of, for example, at least paying $50 a month, at least, maybe, creating some type of long-term arrangement, look at the way in which you're wasting away your money. The way in which you're mistreating your family, your household. Now I have to step in to clean things up. And again, I want to emphasize that I understand the nature of colonialism. And that would be its own episode. Because the Netherlands is not our savior. At the end of the day, the reason we're here is because of slavery. This flesh belongs in Africa. Alright, but I'm in the Caribbean. I love the Caribbean. So, thank God for it at the end of the day. Not for slavery, emphasize that. I mean, thank God for, life in the Caribbean. We can't change the past, but we can learn from it, right? So, they know how to say, you know what? The fact that you get paid 2 years, you get a salary for 2 whole years. After you leave office, at least cut it down to 1. But why is it that we didn't make that decision ourselves? So, with the persons who are coming to you to tell you, hey, vote for me, I want St. Martin to do better, and it's nice to want better. But we need hearts. We need people with a heart for this country. But we need capable people too. It's not enough to have someone who speaks well, or who have all kind of lofty plans. If you don't understand how government functions, if you're speaking to a candidate and they don't leave you feeling smarter and understanding, how government truly functions without having to say, yeah, government bureaucracy and the red tape and we're going to remove it. No. If they don't understand how our high councils function, if they don't understand the role of parliament and the powers that they have to be as co-legislators with the government, but to also have the integrity that when one of their own peers, missteps, does wrong, or does something unethical, or simply, just needs to leave, or just creates a stain in the reputation of this country, which is beyond marred, unfortunately. If they don't have the courage to say, excuse me, sir, partner, what you doing ain't right and you need to go, or miss, ma'am, whatever, whoever it is, you're doing a great job, you need to leave, you need to step down. If they can't do that, then what's the point? What's the point of you then complaining? I get it. We hear so often, yeah, but you have new ones go in and they do the same thing. But look at how do you make the decision. What you need to consider is the way in which you vet a person, a candidate. At least start with education. Now, we have this saying, educated fool. So I ain't saying school is the only, just a degree is the only criteria. But at least start with education. Because are we looking to create we are already creating new generations of, certain MPs who, for example, when you have a meeting about, I remember, it was last year, the meeting about garbage contracts. No, the meeting about land. The whole land scandal that took place on St. Martin. One of the MPs is going to talk about, he's going to spend his time talking about garbage. The meeting is about land, not no garbage contract. But then when you have, again, they just, let's say you have people, that we pay and they do not go to work. And then for some of them who go, they go late all the time. So what affairs of the country are being handled? Issues within our education system, issues within our economy, right? So education is one. And education as, your professional capacity, but also your knowledge of the system. I get that, if you're young, 20s, 30s, you don't have experience working in government, but there are enough books and material, there are enough videos out there for you to, if you say you want to represent this country, represent the people, there are enough material out there for you to sit and study. There are enough seniors or elders or professionals that you can go and learn from. But if so another thing is application or capacity, personal growth. Education is one, but if a candidate comes to you and you see no element of personal growth, personal development, how can they help you if they can't help themselves? Because what you have is people who go into politics, create lifelines in politics, and so basically the only way that they could survive, the only way that they could live on St. Martin is they need to be empowered. Their children, their grandchildren, their great-great-grandchildren, the only way their family can live, can prosper, is if they're in politics. What kind of thing is that? When will that change? You mean to say, so what is it to make use of your mind, your ability to work, the palm of your hand, the skills that God has given you, apply them and make something of yourself instead of riding on the backs of the people because you don't have what it takes, because you're weak, absolutely weak. So we need to consider the ability of the candidates to govern, to lead. And so I know very well what it's like. The reality is people they have family members, they have friends who go up in politics, and they'll come to you asking for your support. But if we love them enough to say, you don't have what it takes. Thank you for coming to me, but you don't have what it takes. Because else we'll be creating a new generation of the same old things that we don't like. And that is how you get the same old. But I'm not saying that every candidate and every person who goes in doesn't have what it takes. There are those who do. But are you willing to change the story? Will the story continue? Will it end? Right? To change the narrative by not looking at who's just a popular name, who is a popular voice. Even if I ran for, and I'm not, by the way, absolutely not. Don't consider it. I'm not. But even as if I were to come before you, if I, just as I'm being critical, criticize me. Do a lot of cross-referencing, analyze me, dig into my background. Because another thing you need to know is not that you're looking for people's personal business in terms of what they do in their household, etc. But if you have been a businessman known for improper practices, poor ethics, breaking deals, why would I put you into Parliament? To do what? Why would I consider making you a minister or celebrating that you're a minister? Why? What is the reputation that people have outside of your proximity to them? Sometimes we know we got people that we close to that, you should tell them, just sit it out, man. Just have a back seat. It's not that you're putting down the person, but we need to uplift our country. Country before self. Country before self. Country before self. That is significant and that matters, folks. These are some of the things you need to consider. Because the reason why we are where we are today, as far as this autonomous state and country St. Martin, which is a statement that we should stop saying, by the way, because you don't hear Jamaicans say country Jamaica or, Guyanese say independent Guyana or country Guyana. It's just Guyana. It's just St. Martin, right? It's just St. Martin. Nonetheless, the reason we're here is because we were part of a constellation, the Netherlands Antilles, a federation where you had a federal government and a local government. The federal government had a lot of powers, and the local government here in St. Martin felt like, we had like a form of taxation without adequate representation. We had representation, but it wasn't adequate. And so the taxes we're paying to Curacao, paying to the federal government, wasn't really ensuring that we had a fair amount of funds to fix our roads and develop our island and, invest in our education, etc. So we felt like this thing was not working. And because it's not working, we need something new, we need something fresh. But again, remember, the Netherlands was not in favor of it. So what they did is they reluctantly applied after tons of negotiations to allow St. Martin to be a constituent state, a country within the kingdom. To have a measure of autonomy, to do your own thing, man. Go ahead. Lift yourself up by the bootstraps. But what it really was a long rope for Margot Goat. That's old time saying. Long rope for Margot Goat, very thin goat. So the goat will just, think that it's free because the rope is just around the goat, right? It's just around the goat, and the goat is doing anything and everything it wants. Until it goes to a certain point when the rope starts to get smaller, and then the rope becomes a noose around its neck. And so what you need to consider for next elections, one of the things is for certain, what ideas, not ideas, we have enough ideas, what plans and what measures will be taken to whether restructure or improve the political status of this island, which is necessary for its future, because it is a mainstay in the limits or advantages that we have where decision making on a high level is concerned. How will improvements within the kingdom take place, whether that is a route? As we know, there's the independence movement or the independence route. And if independence is that is the route they favor, what is the plan? How do we get to that point? How do we get to that point? So if it's to remain in the kingdom, what is the plan? How do we thrive as a nation? And if it's independence, same question applies. We live in a tourism-based economy, and at the end of the day, that's not going to change anytime soon. But how can we improve it? Because you have where Bill Gates, for example, already speaking about pandemic 2.0. He's done mention it in 1 or 2 interviews. So when the next pandemic comes, whenever that is, how do we feed our people? How do we feed our people? How do we ensure that we don't have a huge flood of unemployment, business closures, etc.? So what plans, no ideas, I don't want no ideas. What plans, initiatives do you have to improve our economy? Education-wise, there are so many professions that we, or areas, sectors on this island where we import consultants and experts and technocrats because we lack capacity. We knew that we wanted to be an autonomous country, and all the time we had to build and invest into our people. What were we doing? Just running around, I guess. Well, let me not go there yet. So, when it comes to building the capacity St. Martin needs, what are the plans, not ideas? There's enough ideas from 1960 that we can go to, pull out of some dusty drawer in government and execute. There are enough ideas, plans, reality, a roadmap. That is what we need. That is what we need to consider. And even character. Because character matters. The character of a leader matters. Because especially in this current time we're in, we've seen a lot of pride and arrogance and disrespect from our leaders to our people, to themselves, to the media. But that's because they don't respect themselves. They don't have, their character has not yet been formed. And that is the reason why our generation, the millennials, which I said already, I don't like the term, but it is what it is. I am a millennial, it's born within that time period. But that's one of the reasons we get so much flack and heat. Because if we'll be honest, we complain about the old folks as if we're better. And what we need to learn is that sometimes we need to be patient and understanding that sometimes, as much as we live in a much more developed world than our parents and grandparents did, there are some things that they did that will benefit us. But are you humble enough to receive, to open your ears and listen to wisdom when wisdom speaks? Now, I ain't saying that every old person is wise, because gray hair does not mean wisdom. It's a fact. Not everyone who grows up matures, or grows old grows up. So the character of your leader matters too. You can't just have character, because they have people with good character, but they don't have the ability. They don't have the capacity to lead. Then you have those who have the capacity, but they don't have the character. Full of arrogance or pride, and And then you have those that just don't have what it takes, period. We need to consider the future of this country. If another, it's a reality that we know we live in. If another hurricane to the degree of Irma, or even less, comes, how will we survive? How will we eat tomorrow, folks? What are we doing to improve our health care? I could go on with a long list of stuff, but I will choose to end right there. Just have this, open conversation of what we need to consider. Because if we don't, the story will only continue. And I'll be back here again, talking about the same things, or maybe even worse. So, with that, I would like to say thank you so much for joining me on the Semicolon podcast. It was a great pleasure. And, God bless you. And be sure to tune in again next week, as the podcast launches every Tuesday at 10 a.m. on YouTube and Facebook. And thank you so much for joining me along the way. We're already on episode number 4, and there are quite some great topics that will be coming in the coming weeks. And I do believe that it will be information and stuff that will benefit you greatly. So God bless you once again. Love y'all, and take care.